and his manager was related to money and goods. And then things didn't work out so very well. The last line of the gospel last week was, "You cannot worship wealth and God." So this week we're back in the money business. We find a rich man that's dressed in purple, and I will tell you that makes it even more expensive than just good linens, because the stains that were required to stain a piece of fabric to purple, those stains were very expensive. So not only did he have good fabric, but he had good stains, and it was a lot of money. Well, outside his gate was Lazarus, a poor man who was covered with sores, who was hungry, who was thirsty. And our friend the rich man just kept going right by him. Pretended like he was not even there. The poor man would have been glad to have even the smallest something, even off the floor of the rich man's meal. Just something to eat. Just some water. And the rich man kept going. He'd go in and he'd go out. And the poor man was still there. Lazarus was still sitting there. So there were dogs that licked the wounds on Lazarus. And in our house, if we spill too much on the floor accidentally, then it's the dogs that get called to come help with it. But in this case, even the rich man wouldn't even bring him a piece of bread, some water, a cup of anything, a piece of anything. So Lazarus dies. And in the gospel, we find him with Father Abraham. And the rich man happens to die also. And the rich man ends up in an area that's not much fun to be in. And he's thirsty. His mouth is dry because in the scripture it tells us that there were flames around, and he was hot. And he was dry-mouthed. He just wanted a little bit of water on his tongue. And Father Abraham said, "We can't make this happen. There's this huge ditch between us and between the rich man." So we've spoken of money. We've seen that wealth has not gained these folks very much in their lives. And I'd like to speak to you of a young man that was raised in a rich family. One of those folks that we often look at and say, he had a silver spoon, was born with a silver spoon, you know, where he had everything he wanted. He had money, he had fine clothing, and he was one that could be out and about and have plenty of money to go with his buddies, I would imagine, drinking and that kind of thing. And he was a party fellow. He even got to the point where he joined some of the militias just so he could be part of the folks that had weapons and things like that out and fighting against each other. And the bottom line was he wasn't a very productive fellow. He wasn't somebody that we might want to be friends with. He got in trouble with his father. father just got over this fella spending his money. I think those of you that are parents have been through lots of that, where the kids spend your money when you really wish they wouldn't. So the father took him to the court and said to the judge, I want everything of mine that he has back, and I'll not give him anything else. Now, we look at this sometimes in the world today, and we think about the fact that, you know, they sort of disown you, throw you out the door. That was something that went on in my life. It wasn't about money, it was just about me. And this young man looked at the judge, looked at his father, took his clothes off, dropped him at the feet of his father, and went out the door. And you know, he spent the rest of his life with God. And he led many people to God. And he continues in this day. This man's name at birth was Giovanni. And when his father came home and didn't like how his mother had given him a name, he named him Francis. So this is the story of St. Francis that came out of this kind of situation, finally figured out there was a lot more in life than just the wealth of his father. He felt called by God. And that same God continues to call many of us to serve that God. And we think this is all about money. Now, I don't know about the bank accounts of any of you. But you know what I know about is the goodness you have, and if there is a need, you reach in, and if you got $100, you'll put in 10 or 15 or 20. I know that for a fact. I've been here among you almost a year and a half now. And I think the wording of wealth is way more than just about money. It's developing a simplicity in your life. Francis used to tell his followers about living in poverty. And in 2016, the word poverty makes you feel like you got to have simpler clothes and just not much money in the bank. And I think that's not what we're being guided to. Wealth has to do with your time, your talents, your love for God and the needs of others. So as we think about these people that had money, what did it give them? What did they gain from their wealth in the year of about 1200? I think we need to spend our time prayerfully thinking about the wealth that we have. Are you a musician? Are you a sower? Are you somebody that can go with others and pray? Maybe you have to dig a hole and plant a tree. Who knows what the need is? This is your wealth. This is what you have to use in this world in 2016 and years to come and years in past to serve God. We all have wealth. And it doesn't have to be what's in the bank. And I'm not going to ask you all to think about poverty. We We get poverty when we're not doing the things that we've been gifted to do. So we had a merchant that had a manager, and that didn't work out at all. They were all this illegal kind of behind the trees stuff was going on. And today we find the rich man who had wealth. We know that. If he's dressed in purple and fine linens, and yet he didn't use the real wealth that he had, and that was the ability to help Lazarus. A piece of bread, a cup of water. So I think these two lessons show us that we all, every one of you, no matter how small your bank account is, has wealth. You have something to give to God's people in God's name. So I'm going to ask you to think about that and prayerfully look at what gifts you have to give them to others as you see fit. Be it that bread, be it that cup of water. Maybe it's stopping for somebody you see on the street corner. Maybe it's talking to somebody in the parish hall on Wednesday that don't have very much. And we are all, I can look around this room and see the talents of many people that are here. So I suggest that we take time in God's name to use our talents to the benefit of His children. Amen.